Welcome to Afternoon Tea. I'm Dr. Linda, emergency medicine physician from Sheffield, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Dr. Erica, who is a GP from the West Midlands, and we are both lifestyle medicine physicians. If you haven't met us before, please introduce yourself in the chat below and let us know what is your favorite hot cup of tea. We host Afternoon Tea every Sunday at 5 p.m. UK time, where you can connect with the world-renowned experts. And we share 3 actionable takeaways that you can implement in your life right away to start achieving your health goals. You can chat directly with our guest experts here on Zoom or follow us live stream via Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube. We are working with our guest today, Dr. Hans Diehl, to bring you a book on lifestyle medicine 101. It's called U-Turn to Turn Your Life Around, which all of you who have registered today will have access to after the second talk on the 20th of June. If you're ready to implement your life goals, join our free membership on our website to be part of our supportive communities to set you up for success.
Today, we have the honor to be joined by the stimulating, motivating, and dynamic Dr. Hans Diehl. Chosen as one of America's 20 superheroes of the health movement, Dr. Hans Diehl is the founder of Lifestyle Medicine Institute in Loma Linda and a clinical professor of preventive medicine at the School of Medicine of Loma Linda University, California. Offering more than 30 years of leadership in the fast-growing field of lifestyle medicine, his pioneering efforts as an epidemiologically trained lifestyle interventionist with the Complete Health Improvement Program, CHIP, and its more than 85,000 graduates have consistently shown how simple lifestyle changes can prevent, arrest, and facilitate the reversal of many of our largely lifestyle-related chronic diseases. The clinical results of his research have been published in more than 45 peer-reviewed medical journals. And his books, Health Power, Dynamic Living, Take Charge of Your Life, Your Health, and U-Turn, and the Optimal Diet Cookbook have been translated into 36 languages with more than 2 million copies in circulation. And here is a powerful excerpt from his book, U-Turn. Consciously or unconsciously, most people make sacrifices of some sort. Unfortunately, in the process and all too often, they sacrifice health, family, and other priceless possessions in order to gain the transitory pleasures of wealth, power, status, or fame. And yet, in the end, many discover that the only true wealth is resilient health. While some may argue that health is not everything, yet without it, everything is nothing.
Welcome, Hans. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for your welcome. I'm delighted to be with you today. You are 2 amazing board-certified lifestyle medicine specialists. And I tell you, I've been very moved by your unusual devotion of bringing these Sunday programs to the attention of your audience, and to also have succeeded bringing some of the foremost medical leaders in the lifestyle medicine movement to your audience. I mean, this is a big accomplishment. And I just want to affirm that the lifestyle medicine movement has recognized the need for going beyond the mere management of the symptomatic treatment of these chronic diseases. We need to do more in medicine than just passing out pills and performing procedures. We need to reach the causes of these modern killer diseases, which now represent 70% of all of our deaths here in America and also in the UK. And these diseases have now gone worldwide. It's a global epidemic, and they relate largely, according to the lifestyle medicine movement, to the habits that are being promoted in our society worldwide. Habits drive disease. And so today I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the causes that we perhaps have to ascribe to this emerging epidemic of chronic diseases. And my focus today will be on the role of diet. There are many factors that contribute to this disease epidemic, but I want to focus on perhaps one of the largest and most prominent factor, and that is the role of diet in the etiology of circulation-related chronic diseases. Now, what people sometimes don't realize is that we have not always had these chronic diseases. Here you see a textbook, a medical textbook by Sir William Osler, published in 1920. It says, you can expect one heart attack a year in an average hospital in an average sized town. How many heart attacks a year?
One.
One a year. I mean, when they had a heart attack, they would call all the medical students and all the doctors wondering what this unusual cause of death was, because they'd never seen this before. And yet today, the number of heart attacks in the United States is 3,000 a day, with cardiovascular disease being responsible for every third death. This is an incredible change in the rate of heart disease, from almost zero to 3,000 heart attacks a day. It's unbelievable. And then you look at breast cancer trends. Again here, 1960, you could expect 1 in 20 women to develop breast cancer. Today, it's 1 in 7 women. And then you look at diabetes trends here. Again, you see a dramatic increase, especially in the last 30 years. We see a 300% increase in type 2 diabetes, especially since the 1980s. And yet, here's the National Institutes of Health. This is the largest and most prominent body of medical care in America. They said we have no medical cure. Don't we have insulin? Don't we have metformin? Folks, as you all know, physicians are today very, very frustrated because we give these medications to diabetics, and we give more and more and more until they finally die from diabetes because we did not cure the disease. We just manage, we just try to control the blood sugar levels, and yet we need to find a better way to solve these problems. And then what do you see here? You see 3 chairs. These are American seats. You see them changing slightly from 1900 to 1970, right? So there wasn't much change in the size of chairs or the obesity, but look at this. This is now 30, 40 years later. The chairs have grown almost, look at this, 61 centimeters. And people said, well, maybe America had too many lumber stores and they need to get rid of the lumber, so they just built larger chairs. No. This was to facilitate the enlarging American derriere. And with that kind of a dramatic increase in obesity, we're now in America, 70% of the people are either obese or overweight. We begin to realize that when you are really developing this obesity issue, the likelihood of developing diabetes is 7 times higher, high blood pressure 6 times higher, heart disease 5 times higher. You know, obesity is not something that is that you just brush off and say, well, you know, some people are large, some people are small. No, this is a very serious health risk. And then again, people sometimes come up with the argument, well, you know, we have so much more chronic disease today, more heart disease, more breast cancer, more ovarian cancer, we have more arthritis, we have more diabetes because we live longer today. Well, you know, it's true we live longer today than 100 years ago, but the reason is that we had lower death rates from neonatals. This is the reason why it seems that we live so many more years today than 100 years ago, but actually we haven't really changed all that much. We've probably added Adults have probably added 6 or 7 years more in the last 100 years. And in those days, we had no medical care system. Today, we have the most sophisticated, high-tech medical care system, and yet we may have only added 6 or 7 years. And many of these years are spent in nursing homes and in invalid state. So here's data from looking at 1996 versus 2012, and you see it is not a matter of age that we live longer and therefore we have more chronic disease. No, look at this. You look at the age group of 45 to 64, and the chronic disease have increased by 50%. You go to 61 to 79 age bracket, and again, the chronic disease have increased more than 50%. And you go to people that are living now 80 years plus, and again, you've seen a dramatic increase in chronic disease. These chronic diseases have been spread across the ages here in America in the last 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, when I went to my internship and looked at diabetes, I usually looked for people that were in their 60s and 70s and they're overweight. These were the type 2 diabetics, the adult onset diabetics. We don't even use that word anymore because now we have adult onset diabetes, type 2 diabetes in 15-year-olds, in 16-year-olds, in 17-year-olds, in 18-year-olds, and they're all obese, just about. And so why do we have these problems? It's not that we live longer as such. It's because we have seen a dramatic change in our diet. Our culture has dramatically changed, particularly in the 1970s. That was the big diet revolution in America. And here you see what happened. You see the emergence of fast food, 1972, 2 billion pounds a year. 2019, the latest data we have is fast foods now represent 145 billion pounds. And when it comes to telling people to eat more vegetables, they think, well, I eat vegetables, I have French fries. Folks, that's not a vegetable, really. And then you begin to look at the epidemiology, and you take a look there. 1952, Japan, the University of Tokyo, the medical school, imported coronary arteries from Johns Hopkins University in America and Baltimore. They said, we want to buy coronary arteries from you, of people, of course, who have died first. And because we cannot show our Japanese medical students here in Tokyo what kills in then every second American from coronary artery disease. We don't have this disease here. 1952, Japan. Folks, things have changed in Japan. Japan no longer imports coronary arteries from America because they are now self-sufficient. They make their own coronary arteries. Heart disease has become the #2 cause of death in Japan. You can go to China, 1978. It was very difficult to find high cholesterol levels there. It was very difficult to find heart disease in rural China. All of that has changed now. Now you go to Beijing, in particular, some of Shanghai, some of the big centers, Hong Kong, and the rates are just about as high as what we have here in America. And the cholesterol levels are just about comparable to what we have in the UK. Things have changed because we brought the Western culture, the Western diet into these countries. 1991, Lithuania, a small country that was dominated by the Soviet Union. 1991, they kicked out the Soviets, the Russians were kicked out, and Lithuania became independent again. And so what happened? They kicked out the Russians and they brought in the West. And then with the West, they brought in particular, all the Western food. I was there, I couldn't believe it. I drove into the gas station to get some gas, and the man pumping the gas said to me, well, actually, you know, we don't make our profit here from selling gas. You want to come inside and take a look? And there he was, M&Ms, chips, Coca-Cola, Red Bull. It was as if I was in an American store. And with that, in Lithuania, you have seen the death rate from heart disease double in the last 30 years. Is there a relationship between diet and chronic disease? I was in Saudi Arabia, and I couldn't believe the long lines in front of the McDonald's. And I saw also the obese children there, and women obese, men obese. I mean, I've never seen so many pregnant men in my life as when I was in Saudi Arabia there. I mean, there is a direct relationship between diet and disease. And here you see a very summarizing slide. Take a look at this. The green color on these bar graphs shows the amount of starchy foods eaten. You notice there when the income level in a society is fairly low on the very left side, most people live on unrefined, complex carbohydrate foods. These are starchy foods like whole grains, not white flour, whole grains. They live on potatoes, not potato chips. They live on brown rice, not white rice. And please also note, the content of protein, the blue color there, is always adequate as long as people have enough calories. And then down below, you see the yellow colors. This is sugar and some fats. That's the diet that you find in societies where you also cannot find chronic diseases such as atherosclerosis related, circulation-related diseases. But then, as you shift towards the right-hand side, you see the GDP, the gross domestic product, the income now increases in a society, and a society begins to change. It no longer eats brown rice, it begins to eat white rice. It no longer eats potatoes, it eats now potato chips, and everything moves to the right-hand side. And then on the very right-hand side, you see the American diet, which is exported all over the world. And what you see here is, you see most of the calories come from fats, animal fats and vegetable fats. And then you also see the yellow colors, and then you have sugar. The American diet is basically sugar and fats, and then a very small portion is starch, and that starch does not come from unrefined whole grains. No. This comes from white flour products like pizzas and cakes and pies. And then you also see a dramatic increase in the consumption of protein. Animal protein has increased dramatically in the diet in the last 30, 40, 50 years. This is then one of the powerful relationships between the income of a society and the move towards more refined, engineered products coupled with a carnivorously oriented diet. Just to give you some idea. Here you see the shift that began in the 1970s, in particular in America, and then has gone around the world. You see the consumption of sugar, 1825, 2 teaspoons per person per day. Now in America, 30 teaspoons per person per day.
Heart attacks, certain cancers, osteoporosis, diabetes. The major diseases of our society may be caused in part by what we eat.
I first woke up, so to speak, when I was working on the anesthesia service, learning how to put people to sleep. And I was seeing my patients for the next day's surgery for coronary artery bypass surgery in order to bypass clogged arteries in their heart. Because it was late at night, I drew the man's blood test, and when I took the blood to the laboratory and had it processed, I couldn't believe my eyes. Now, normally, this liquid layer floating on top of the blood clot is quite transparent. It's a yellow, but quite clear. You can see right through it. The blood in this patient's tube, however, was anything but clear. The serum floating on his clot was thick and greasy white. It looked like glue. In fact, it stuck to the sides of the blood tube when I shook the tube. I went back to the patient. I said, Mr. Phillips, did you eat before you came to the hospital tonight? He said, yes. I said, what did you have? He said, I had a cheeseburger and a milkshake. And when he said that, I realized that what I was looking at in his tube was all the fat in the beef burger, all the butter fat in the cheese, and the butter fat in the ice cream and in the milkshake. And all this fat had oozed out into his blood and actually turned his blood fatty. Well, 30, 40, 50 years of keeping your blood very fatty creates changes in the blood vessels that are very dangerous.
Over the years, arteries can become clogged with fatty material. Then a blood clot can form, blocking the blood flow completely. If the artery leads to the heart, the lack of oxygen can cause heart muscle to die. That's a heart attack. If the clogged artery leads to the brain, the patient has a stroke.
The next morning, we took Mr. Phillips to the operating room, and I put him to sleep, and the surgeon opened up his chest. And from these arteries, he began pulling out yellow, greasy deposits of fatty material called atherosclerosis.
Did you see that?
Wow, that's an incredible illustration of what's happening. That's incredible.
What you saw is the underlying killer process of most of our, if not all of our circulation-related chronic diseases. This is the killer. This is the pathology. This is what relates very closely to the inflammatory processes that are taking place nowadays. Atherosclerosis, a narrowing of the lumen of the vascular structures in the body. Here you see the cross-section of some of the major arteries in our body. We're born with clean arteries, zero narrowing. By the time we're 20 years of age, we already have 20% narrowing and infiltration of these plaques you see here. By the time a person is 60 years of age, by the time they're 60 years of age, they already have 60, 70% narrowing of the arteries. By the time they're 70, 80 years of age, they have 90%. And the disease doesn't express itself symptomatically. You don't have any symptoms until you're about 70% narrowing. So when a person comes to me and says, I have this chest pain, I say, you're lucky that you have angina, because it means that you have at least 70% narrowing already. It's time for you to make some big changes in how you live your lives. You need to be on a plant-based whole food diet. The 14% calorie segment that I showed you earlier. You have to get into an exercise program, and there's no room for a cigarette. And you have to be very careful with alcohol too. And you have to get enough sleep. These are all these factors that work together to create this problem. And folks, once you have that bypass, that's not going to save you. We'll talk about that in 2 weeks. There are better ways for most people that have angina pain than to have surgical procedures. We'll give you the data in a couple of weeks. And what is really most disconcerting is that this atherosclerotic plaque is a systemic element. It affects the whole system, the whole body. It affects all the circulatory system. Do you know that you have about 60,000 miles of blood vessels? That's 100,000 kilometers of circulatory system in your body per customer. 100,000 kilometers. And the larger vessels, particularly the cerebral arteries, that become affected by the atherosclerotic process. And so you have to worry about strokes. It affects the small arteries to the ear, so you have to worry about hearing loss. It affects the arteries to the eye, so you have to worry about visual deficiencies. And then it affects the coronary arteries, of course, and the renal arteries, the kidney disease, and the femoral arteries affecting the legs. And then you have to worry about the penile arteries. Do you know that 45% of the 40-plus-year-old men in America already are affected by a loss of potency, which leads to impotence? Penile, I mean, it's not Viagra that you need, it's a dietary change, because these penile arteries are narrowed down by these atherosclerotic processes. Hello? Is there a relationship between diet and disease? Is there a relationship between libido and diet? Think about that. We can change that if we want to. And so here you see the atherosclerosis-related diseases: myocardial infarction, angina, cerebral infarction, stroke, senility, hearing loss, visual loss, high blood pressure, gangrene, impotence, claudication, degenerative disease. These are all atherosclerosis-related diseases that have a direct relationship to these risk factors, and here you see them. This is what drives these atherosclerosis diseases. The big three: high cholesterol, smoking, and high blood pressure. We all know this, but somehow we don't do anything about it. And then you have diabetes and obesity and triglycerides on the left side. On the right side you have being a couch potato, no exercise program, stress, and maybe genetics in some ways too. Please note, these are the risk factors that drive the atherosclerosis-related circulation-related chronic disease in our society. Just to give you some idea, if you had a high cholesterol of 8.0, you have high blood pressure, you're a smoker, you have diabetes, and you didn't pass a treadmill test, you're 35 years of age, the risk of a heart attack in 6 years is 14%. Look at this. These are the drivers of circulation-related diseases. On the other hand, if you would have a cholesterol that is more ideal, and that should always be 0.0 or less than that, 5.2 is only normal for populations that normally die from heart disease. You don't want to be normal. No. You want to get the cholesterol down to levels of 2.8 or 3.5, or certainly no higher than 4.0. Because these numbers you find in societies where you cannot find atherosclerosis-related disease, where you don't find heart disease. So now you have a very low cholesterol, an ideal cholesterol, you have ideal blood pressure, you know, smoking, no diabetes, you pass your treadmill test, and look at this. The chances of a heart attack in 6 years for a 35-year-old man is 140 times higher for the person with the high risk profile when compared to the low risk profile. Amazing, isn't it? Coming out of the famous Framingham study. And here you see again, you look at this risk arch, which drives heart disease and these circulatory diseases. Please note, you see the yellow stars? Cholesterol, diet. You can lower the cholesterol in 30 days by 30% just by making some dietary changes. High blood pressure. Most people that have essential hypertension can be off their blood pressure pills in 30 days to 6 weeks, as we have demonstrated over and over again by making some dietary changes, especially in the amount of sodium, which is so high in our Western society, and losing some weight, getting into an exercise program. And then you look at diabetes. Diabetes can be easily changed. I mean, we see within 3 to 4 days after dietary change, a reduction in blood sugar levels. We'll talk about that in our next lecture in 2 weeks. Diabetes is largely reversible. Amazing. Medication is not going to reverse the disease. No, but you have to get to the cause of the problem, the habits that people have become accustomed to. Obesity. These are the kind of things, again, diet, triglycerides, largely diet related. So we need to really begin to understand that diet and chronic disease are directly related. Here you see what happens when you have high cholesterol numbers. This is a study on 350,000 people, multi-billion-dollar study, one of the best studies ever done, published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. They found the higher the cholesterol, as you can see, from 3.2 up 8.4, the higher the cholesterol, the higher the death rate from coronary disease. Please note, if you go from a low cholesterol to a high cholesterol, you have from 4 to 18. You have a 4-fold increase in the death rate from coronary disease. This is the famous Mr. Fit study, multiple risk factor intervention trial. And the founder, the mastermind, Dr. Jeremiah Stamler, said that probably 87% of all of our major coronary events before 65 years of age could be prevented if we would get our cholesterol below 4.5, we do something about our systolic blood pressure, and we do something about our diabetes and smoking. And he said, even in 1978, it's reasonable, he said, that rich diet is the primary, essential, and necessary cause of the current epidemic of premature atherosclerotic disease raging in countries now all around the world. Cigarette smoking and hypertension, yeah, they're important, but they're only secondary and complementary causes. Here's Dr. Gatto, then the president of the American Heart Association. He spoke before the Senate. They had a hearing in 1977, and he said, in societies with blood cholesterol levels below 4.0, it is virtually impossible to find coronary heart disease or atherosclerosis. We have known these things. They relate largely to the intake of saturated fat and the amount of cholesterol that we consume. Please note, read the last 3 lines on this slide here. Every 1% increase in serum cholesterol increases coronary risk by 2.5 times. At the same time, every 1% drop in the blood cholesterol level, every 1% drop in cholesterol decreases the coronary risk by 2.5 times. What does that mean? Well, let's take an example. Let's say that you have a cholesterol level of 2.5. Well, I'm sorry. This was really, now I should make this, there's a mistake here. This is really the American numbers, 250 milligrams to 200 milligrams. This is probably, let me see, 2.5, 250 divided by 4. Yeah, you go from 6.0 down to 4.8. So you bring your cholesterol number down from 6.0 down to 4.8, which is a 20% drop in cholesterol. That 20% drop will cut your risk of a heart attack by 50%, because you take the percent times 2.5 and you come up with 50%, and you can do this in 30 days. 30 days. Just by making some dietary changes. Here's the results from our CHIP program. Please note, people that had cholesterol levels over 7.0, there were 126 people. We dropped in less than 30 days the cholesterol by 20%, just in response to an intensive education program called the CHIP program. And here, again, these are some of the world authorities in atherosclerosis. Dr. William Connor, he said it's very easy to create heart disease in animals. All you have to do is give them a lot of saturated fat and a lot of cholesterol and lots of coconut oil, which is the most highly saturated fat available today. That's all you have to do. And you can create these heart attacks in monkeys within 19 months. Here's Dr. Castelli from the Framingham study. He said, if you want to create coronary artery disease in monkeys, all you have to do is feed them a typical, I'm sorry to say, hospital diet. Yeah. Medicine has failed to recognize the powerful contribution that diet makes to heart disease. Otherwise, we would not feed in our hospitals patients after a heart attack cheese and omelets and sirloin steaks. No. We have missed the boat there. Please note, this is the summary of some of the best research in the world that shows that probably 70% of stroke, 71% of cancer, 82% of heart disease, 91% of diabetes type 2 could be avoided and prevented if people made some simple dietary changes. Here's some of the top people in the American government said, our nation's largest killer disease are largely lifestyle related. We can prevent them, we can delay them. They're not prevented by vaccines or cured by pills and procedures. They are largely an extension of our health damaging behaviors, our use of tobacco, lack of exercise, and our rich diet. Habits drive disease. But good habits also drive health. Here's the Surgeon General, the highest medical authority in the country, Dr. Everett Koop. He said, and this was in 1988 in a large report, and he said, one personal choice seems to influence long-term health prospects more than any other, what we eat. I want to take you now to Loma Linda. This is where I live. Man, it looks great, doesn't it? Yeah, that's the way it looks in the wintertime. There's the medical center, and that's the center of one of the largest public health studies looking at the relationship between diet and chronic disease. This is Loma Linda University in Southern California, where people usually are long-living people. They're part of the what they call blue zone, where you have the largest group of centenarians. Here is my neighbor, Dr. Wareham, 804, And you have one of our community leaders here, Marge Jetton, 106 years of age. This was done 5 years. This picture was taken 5 years before they had that age. Dr. Wareham at 97 was still doing coronary bypass surgery, 97 years of age. Yeah, working with some of his former students, one of the leaders in open heart surgery in California for 60, 70 years. He was a chief of cardiology at Loma Linda University School of Medicine. And what do these blue zone countries have in common? There's 5 major areas in the world where you have the most concentration of centenarians. In Japan, in Sardinia, Loma Linda. These are 3 of the big areas. And what they have in common is no smoking, supportive family, and in particular, a plant-based diet. These people are also involved in gardening, and they're outdoor people. When they studied the Adventist population a little bit more closely here in North America, they enrolled 100,000 Adventist people. These are fairly conservative Christian people. They don't use alcohol, they don't smoke, and they consider their bodies to be on loan. And they see themselves as stewards, as people who are called to take care of their bodies because they know there's only one body per customer. And so they did this big study funded by the National Institutes of Health. The university received millions of dollars for this study. And here's what they found. They have published over 300 scientifically peer-reviewed publications. And they found, this is the first study done in 1980-some. They had 25 people in California. They looked at Adventist versus Californian people. They were all matched in age and income and education and so on. This is a very sophisticated study, and they found that the Adventist meat eaters, you see here, they had only 64% of the average Californian death rates from heart disease. The reason being that Adventists don't smoke. That's probably one of the big reasons there. But then they looked among the Adventists. Some of the Adventists are meat eaters. Some of the Adventists are lacto-ovo-vegetarians. They don't eat meat, but they eat dairy products and eggs. They have 40% of the expected rate of fatal heart disease. And then they looked at the pure vegetarian Adventists. They only had 23% of the expected rate of fatal heart disease. Please note, within the Adventist community here, there's a difference of 300%. Adventist meat eaters have 300% more fatal heart disease than Adventists that are plant-based oriented people. And here you see again, when they compared Adventist meat eaters, the red bar, with Adventist lacto-ovo-vegetarians, the lacto-ovo-vegetarians, they're not pure vegetarians, but they're moving in that direction. They only have half the amount of hypertension. They only have 2/3 the amount of arthritis. They only have 2/3 the amount of prostate cancer, and they only have half the amount of colon cancer. What do you think? Moving towards a lacto-vegetarian diet is a pretty good idea, isn't it? And then came the next study that was done in the last 10 years with 96,000 some Adventists in North America. And they noticed, they learned that about 10% of these people are pure vegans, pure vegetarians. And now 30% of these people are lacto-vegetarians. And 10% are vegetarians that eat fish. And 50% of the Adventists are meat eaters. And the government asked, does it make a difference among the Adventists how long they live and what disease they get, depending on their particular dietary program that they're following? And here's what you find. This is now in pounds. You can see the red bar on the left side are the Adventist women that are meat eaters, and they usually weigh about 40 pounds more than the Adventists on the left side in the green bar. These are the vegans. And for men, the same thing is true here. The Adventist men that are meat eaters, they weigh on the average 193 pounds versus vegan 161 pounds, a difference of 30 pounds. So if you wanted to do something about your weight, do something about it by moving your diet. Here you see it now expressed in kilograms. You see the Adventist women that are meat eaters weigh 82 kilograms, the vegans about 64, and for men it's 88 kilograms as meat eaters and 73 kilograms for vegetarians, pure vegetarians. And then they looked at what happened to the development of diabetes in these Adventists, in this large study of 100,000 people. 6.3% of the Adventist meat eaters had diabetes, but only 1.6% of the people had diabetes in the vegan classification. And please note, the further you move gradually towards a plant-based diet, the less diabetes you can find in the population. Let that sink in. Diabetes. And then you go to hypertension. Here again, 19% of the meat-eating Adventists were on medication for high blood pressure, but only 5% among the vegans. And you can see again the stepwise decline in the need for medication for high blood pressure, depending on the diet. And then here you have cholesterol. Again, 15% of the meat eaters have high cholesterol. Many of them are on statin drugs, while the vegans have very few people have high cholesterol problems because they don't eat cholesterol and they're staying away from the saturated fat, which you find concentrated in animal products. Well, the Journal of the American Medical Association in 2017 published a major study. Now, this study doesn't come from some vegetarian publication. No. This is the American Medical Association Journal. Huge study. They found, and they predicted, they're based on their study, that about 48%, that's about half of all the heart disease, cardiovascular mortality, half of all the metabolic mortality coming from diabetes and related problems. Some half of all the cardiometabolic mortality could be avoided. You could cut it in half if people were willing to do the following. Here's what they recommend. Increase the amount of fruit consumed by 3 times. 300 grams a day, they recommend. Increase vegetables and legumes, those beans and lentils, by at least 2 to 3 times. Consume about 400 grams of vegetables and legumes a day. And also increase your nut and seed consumption by about, increase it to 20 grams a day. These are high calorie foods, but they're very nutritious and healthy. And we should have some nuts and seeds every day. And they recommend increase whole grains. Folks, this is not pizza. This is not pastries. This is not cookies. They talk about whole grains, brown rice, barley, millet, wheat, whole grain, multi-grain breads. They recommend it should be increased by 6 times. Eat 6 times more whole grain products than you usually today do. And they recommend 125 grams a day. And then in addition to this, they said, but when you increase these kind of foods to take care of obesity and heart disease and reduce the risk for cancer and diabetes, you also want to decrease meats. Eat no more than 14 grams of meat a day. Folks, you know how much that is? I mean, it's not worth it even, is it? 14 grams. So they basically recommend a plant-based diet. And then they say processed meat, 0, because of the cancer relationship to colon cancer, intestinal cancer. And then number 7, sugary beverages, cut them to 0. Go from 1 can a day or more than that to 0. Delete these soft drinks and also reduce your sodium, the salt intake, to cut it just about in half. If you were going to do these simple things, like increase fruits, vegetables, and whole grains and legumes, and eat some extra nuts and seeds a day. And be careful with your meats, processed meat in particular, and sugary drinks and sodium. They predict that based on their model, that probably 48% of all the mortality from cardiovascular and metabolic disease could be avoided. And this is what we recommend. This is what we recommend in the CHIP program. This is what we recommend as the best way to not only prevent disease, but also reverse disease. And that is, go from the left side of this graph here. Go from consuming, excessively meats, dairy, eggs, processed foods, and sodium, and alcohol, caffeine, and soda. Go from that kind of a typical American diet. This is the diet that is sweeping the world. Some people call it the keto diet, and all kinds of names, and high protein diet. You go from that area towards the right-hand side, and you now consume more fruits and vegetables, more whole grains, more legumes, some nuts and seeds, and drink lots of water. And what happens? You move you move from the left side, where you have the worst health outcomes. This is disease-ridden society right here on the left side, deep red. You move towards the healthier societies where you cannot find many of these chronic diseases because these people don't have the money to turn good products into industrialized products. I mean, this is what we did in the 1970s in America, and the world has followed us, unfortunately, where we actually now shifted from eating slow foods to fast foods. In the 1970s, the change began from eating at home to eating out. We shifted from eating potatoes to shifting potato chips. We shifted from beans to burgers. We shifted from drinking water to soda pop. And with these kind of changes, you've seen a dramatic increase in the incidence rate of chronic diseases, just as we saw in Japan in 1952, what we saw in China in 1978, in Lithuania 1991, and in Saudi Arabia in 2000. Epidemiologists are very clear that diet drives disease and health. What are you going to put at the end of your fork? The estimates are very clear. I mean, this is a summary statement from experts in epidemiology, in nutrition, in disease. Experts estimate that in the US, up to 80% of chronic disease and premature death could be prevented by making significant changes in diet and lifestyle. In addition, I'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. We may add 7 to 14 years of living longer and joining the blue zones of the world, where you have more centenarians than anywhere else, and where people live a different lifestyle, where they have simple diets, where they have exercise, where they're usually not smoking, where they're careful with alcohol, and where they follow the concept that simplicity is elegant, and especially simplicity in our foods. So here are the questions. What would happen if we applied these preventive lifestyle-related strategies? Remember the risk arch, where you change the cholesterol, where you change the blood pressure, where you do the smoking thing, you leave it alone, where you do something about your diabetes and your overweight and your triglycerides and your exercise, and something about your stress. What would happen if you would apply these lifestyle-related strategies to the existing chronic diseases? Dr. Diehl, I already have heart disease. It's too late for me. No. Dr. Diehl, I have already type 2 diabetes. I had it for 10 years. I've been on 150 units of insulin. It's too late for me. No. Dr. Diehl, I'm on 3 medications for high blood pressure to control it. It's too late for me. No. And here's the question then. Could we influence these killer diseases? Could we arrest and disarm and perhaps even reverse these chronic, largely incurable diseases in modern medicine? In high-tech medicine, we have nothing to offer people with these chronic diseases. The best we can do is manage their symptoms with medications and procedures, but rarely turning these diseases around. Do you think we could do that? I'll offer you some solutions on afternoon tea, June 20. Love to meet you there.
What an incredible presentation, Hans. We had so many comments, and you have inspired all of our guests, I can say. Based on the comments, everybody is ready to take on the fight after this. Thank you so much. What an inspiring talk.
I feel honored being part of your afternoon tea. I'm becoming a Britisher more and more.
You have definitely taken over the world, and you have offered health to more than 85,000 patients in your lifetime, and so many more that you can't even count. And what an honor to hear this talk and to actually be inspired and feel that energy and that knowledge, and the two together can really catapult all of us to make the change that we need to, and you inspire us every single day. Thank you so much.
But Linda and Erica, isn't that the purpose? Didn't we choose to become part of the healing arts, to heal people, and to derive our greatest purpose from seeing patients turning their diseases around, as we inspire them, as we motivate them, as we give them a new goal? Because most of these diseases are under our control. The body is designed in such a way that it promotes self-healing. And our purpose then, aside from offering the best that medicine can offer, especially for acute care, but I'm talking about chronic diseases now, the best we can offer our patients, aside from the best of medical care for acute care, is to help our patients to become involved in learning that they can do something to help us as healers to have a product coming out that puts a smile on our faces as doctors.
Actually seeing the root causes being reversed, and not just treating the symptoms that we are also good to do right now in the Western medicine, and not just the NHS, but certainly in America as well. It's very inspiring to be able to see patients actually get better, rather than prescribing them more medications. Pharmageddon, as someone said.
You know, I'm at a medical school here, but I have to tell you, we're doing a very poor job in training young physicians to understand the relationship of lifestyle to chronic disease. We have this idea that as long as I have a pill for every ill, everything is fine. No, it's not. There are always side effects. These things are no longer sustainable financially and otherwise, and people don't really turn their diseases around. They die with diabetes, they die with hypertension, they die with heart disease, in spite of the best efforts that we put forward as physicians to help them, right?
And in our previous conversation, you mentioned a shocking number. How many patients die from side effects from our current medication prescription system?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. Prescription drugs are the number 3 cause of death in America. Prescription drugs are the number 3 cause of death in America, right after cardiovascular disease and cancer.
That is shocking. Something that we prescribe as doctors with the hope that we make them better. It causes the 3rd cause of death in America. That's just...
And so in a way, we become complicit.
Yes.
In this whole process, not aware. So we need to make some changes in the curriculums of medical schools. And that's what lifestyle medicine is all about. We're driving this thing very, very hard. It's the fastest medical subspecialty in America, and it's now in 42 countries. Lifestyle medicine, what you have done, you're board certified lifestyle medicine specialist. You need to lead, work with the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine. Let us crank it up. We can do it. It's time to stop the carnage.
There is a serious urgency for our patients and for our healthcare professionals who are burning out because they are not providing the solution that they were hoping to do. So they wanted to become healers when they signed up to be doctors and nurses, and not seeing any results through their work is unconsciously burning them out because they don't see purpose in their lives any longer.
You know, the frustration among physicians that have been practicing medicine for 10, 20 years is unbelievably high. Suicidal rates are higher than ever among physicians because we're missing out on the joy of medical practice. We don't see the healing of our patients. We're just more and more and more medication.
There's no positive feedback loop for us to keep going. There's nothing that inspires us to go back to work every single day except a 12-hour shift where we only see disease piling on and on and on and death. And nobody comes back with the positive feedback to say, doctor, I feel better, like they do when they take your program and when you treat your patients. Oh, there's so many amazing stories that I would love to ask you about to share with our guests, but I think...
I feel so fortunate that somehow some 30 years ago, I began this concept of lifestyle medicine, and it has been a wonderful experience. I mean, people come to me I've never met before in different countries and say, you saved my life. I said, really? Who are you? Well, I went to the CHIP program. I did this years ago, and it turned me around. And you know, today people everywhere talk about climate change. They talk about sustainability factors. You know, they talk about the ethics in terms of slaughtering here in America 1 million animals every hour to make our stomachs the graveyards of these animals. I mean, there are a lot of people are having a lot of concerns of how our culture has drifted in this direction of processed foods, carnivorous diets, and anything goes. But they're thoughtful thinkers, and they say, couldn't we possibly rethink some of these issues, and couldn't we again recapture the joys of being healers? And that is my purpose today, to reach all of you dear people there. And I hope that I haven't upset you too badly today, but I've given you some thought to think about things, and let us work together and find a better way to take care of our patients. They depend on us. They don't know that we don't know. It's true, but we do know. Just ask these two ladies there. Ask Erica and Linda. I've had some wonderful Zoom meetings with them, and I really appreciate what you folks are doing. Blessings to all of you.
So what are the 3 takeaways that our guests, I mean, there's so much that we have heard today, but just from your personal experience, and what would be those 3 takeaways that they could implement right away, right now?
Number 1, modern medicine is impotent in dealing with chronic diseases. Number 2, it is related to the diet-chronic disease relationship, where our diet today only represents 14% of our calories are coming from foods as grown. Do you know what I mean? Only 14% of the calories we eat comes from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. And everybody, I mean, the Heart Association, the Cancer Society, everybody says we should eat more fruits and vegetables, but nobody does it. So that's number 2. And then number 3, these circulation-related chronic diseases, they have a common underlying pathology: atherosclerosis, inflammatory processes. And we're talking now about a systemic picture of chronic diseases, which means that there is not a particular cure for diabetes and another particular cure for hypertension and yet another cure for heart disease. No, they're all interrelated. You begin to use a very simple diet, and you exercise, you get enough sleep, and you do some of these things, and you begin to realize that all of these chronic diseases are interrelated. You treat one, you treat all. It's amazing I've been doing this for 30 years. And I'm trying to help you catch some of the enthusiasm and the joy that has been mine. Lucky man. Thank you so much. Dr.
Hans, if our audience wanted to connect with you, they can go onto your website, www.hansdiehl.com, which we're just going to put in the chat here. And as mentioned, many of you have asked for more resources on lifestyle medicine, and we are working with Dr. Diehl to create this powerful resource on Lifestyle Medicine 101, which will be made available to you all completely free of charge on our website.
Today, we sort of focused on fork and knife as weapons of mass destruction.
Yes.
As being part of the cause of our epidemic of chronic disease. In 2 weeks, I'm going to talk about forks and knives again, but this time as instruments of hope, health, and healing. It's absolutely amazing how you can turn these diseases around, and the process begins within days as people make some changes in their habits.
And the titles are incredible as well. I hope you can all join us in 2 weeks' time to hear Dr. Hans Diehl for his second part of the talk. As you said, the changes happen so quickly. We don't have to wait a month. We don't have to wait 2 months, half a year. The changes can literally happen within days to a week. People can see dropping in their blood sugar levels, their cholesterol level if they were to do their blood tests, and their blood pressure. So that's incredible. We can't wait to hear about that.
Well, folks, you would consider Erica's comments as being hype. They are not hype. We have over 100,000 graduates now from the program, a 30-hour intensive education program for patients with chronic disease. We have published 52 scientific papers in medical journals. Folks, it's not hype. We're not selling anything. We're just selling good health. And we want to inspire you to become the beneficiaries as medical providers, to have the joy of seeing the fulfillment of your dream of being a healer, to turn diseases around in patients that come to you for help. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Linda. I feel very honored to be on your afternoon tea program.